What were early ideas on evolution?
While some Greek philosophers had theories about the gradual evolution of life, Plato, 427 to 347 b. CE, and Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, were not among them. In the 1700s, natural theology, the explanation of life as the manifestation of the Creator's plan, held sway in Europe. This idea was the motive force behind the work of Carl Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778. Who was the first to classify all known living things by kingdom. Also popular prior to the work of Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, were the theories of special creation. Creationism, blending inheritance. That offspring were always the mixture of the traits of their two parents, and acquired characteristics.
Who is known as the founder of botany?
The ancient Greek Theophrastus, c. 372 c. 287 BCE, is known as the father of botany. His two works on botany, on the history of plants and on the causes of plants, were so comprehensive that 800 years passed before any new significant botanical information was discovered. He integrated the practice of agriculture into botany and established theories regarding plant growth and the analysis of plant structure. He related plants to their natural environment and identified, classified, and described 550 different plants.
How many kinds of mushrooms are edible?
Among the basidiomycetes, there are approximately 200 varieties of edible mushrooms and about 70 species of poisonous ones. Some edible mushrooms are cultivated commercially, more than 844 million pounds. 382,832 metric tons, are produced in the United States each year.
Have wind speeds during tornadoes been accurately measured?
No, tornado wind speeds have been scientifically estimated using Doppler radar and video observations. But there have been no successful attempts to physically measure wind speeds using an anemometer. Many severe tornadoes will destroy an anemometer before it records the wind speed during a tornado. Furthermore, they may occur in many random locations without equipment in place to measure wind speed.
What is the rarest breed of dog?
The Talton bear dog, of which only a few remain, is thought to be the rarest dog. In danger of extinction, this breed was once used by the Talton. Indians of Western Canada to hunt bear, lynx, and porcupine.
Which states have geothermal power plants?
Geothermal power plants in the United States produced 14.86 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity, or 0.4% of the total U.S. electricity generation. 6 states: California, Nevada, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, and Utah all have geothermal power plants. The 34 geothermal power plants in California produce almost 90% of all geothermal generated electricity in the United States.
What are the macronutrients and micronutrients of plants?
The macronutrients of plants are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and sulfur. These all are nearly, or in some cases far greater than, 1% of the dry weight of a plant. The micronutrients are iron, chlorine, copper, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, and boron. Each of the micronutrients constitutes less than 1 to several hundred parts per million in plants. Sodium, silicon, cobalt, and selenium are beneficial elements. Research has not shown that these elements are essential for plant growth and development.
When was the Outer Space Treaty signed?
The United Nations Outer Space Treaty was signed on January 23, 1967. The treaty provides a framework for the exploration and sharing of outer space. It governs the outer space activities of nations that wish to exploit and make use of space, the Moon, and other celestial bodies. It is based on a humanist and pacifist philosophy and on the principle of the non-appropriation of space and the freedom that all nations have to explore and use space. A very large number of countries have signed this agreement, including those from the Western Alliance, the former Eastern Bloc, and non-aligned countries. Space law, or those rules governing the space activities of various countries, international organizations, and private industries, has been evolving since 1957, when the General Assembly of the United Nations created the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, COPUOS. One of its subcommittees was instrumental in drawing up the 1967 Outer Space Treaty.
What health risks are associated with smoking?
Smoking harms nearly every organ in the body. Tobacco smoking, especially cigarettes, is linked to lung cancer, which is the most common cause of cancer death in most countries. 87% of lung cancer cases are caused by cigarette smoking. More deaths are caused each year by tobacco use than by all deaths from human immunodeficiency virus. HIV, illegal drug use, alcohol use, motor vehicle injuries, suicides, and murders combined. For each pack of cigarettes smoked per day, life expectancy is decreased by 7 years. A 2-pack a day smoker will likely die at 60, compared to 74 for a non-smoker in the United States. There is an increased incidence of other lung diseases. Heart and blood vessel diseases, stroke, and cataracts in smokers. Women who smoke face increased problems with infertility, preterm delivery, stillbirths. Babies born with low birth weight, or having a baby die from sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS.
Where does isinglass come from?
Isinglass is the purest form of animal gelatin. It is manufactured from the swimming bladder of sturgeon and other fishes. It is used in the clarification of wine and beer as well as in the making of some cements, jams, jellies, and soups.
Who made the first successful synthetic gemstone?
In 1902, Auguste Victor Louis Verneuil, 1856–1913, synthesized the first man-made gemstone, a ruby. Verneuil perfected a flame fusion method of producing crystals of ruby and other corundums within a short time period.
What is biomass energy?
The catch-all term biomass includes all the living organisms in an area. Wood, crops, and crop waste, and wastes of plant, mineral, and animal matter are part of the biomass. Much of it is in garbage, which can be burned for heat energy or allowed to decay and produce methane gas. However, some crops are grown specifically for energy, including sugar cane, sorghum, ocean kelp, water hyacinth, and various species of trees. It has been estimated that 90% of U.S. waste products could be burned to provide as much energy as 100 million tons of coal. 20% will not burn, but can be recycled. The use of biomass energy is significantly higher in developing countries where electricity and motor vehicles are scarcer.
What are Roman numerals?
Roman numerals are symbols that stand for numbers. They are written using 7 basic symbols: I, 1, V, 5, X, 10, L, 50, C, 100, D, 500, and M, 1000. Sometimes a bar is placed over a numeral to multiply it by 1. 000. A smaller numeral appearing before a larger numeral indicates that the smaller numeral is subtracted from the larger one. This notation is generally used for 4 seconds and nines. For example, 4 is written 4, 9 is 9, 40 is XL, and 90 is XC.
Which planets have rings?
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all have rings. Jupiter's rings were discovered by Voyager 1 in March 1979. The rings extend 80,240 miles. 129,130 kilometers, from the center of the planet. They are about 4,300 miles, 7,000 kilometers, in width and less than 20 miles, 30 kilometers, thick. A faint inner ring is believed to extend to the edge of Jupiter's atmosphere. Saturn has the largest, most spectacular set of rings in the solar system. Saturn's ring system was first recognized by the Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens. 1629 to 1695, in 1659. Its rings are 169,800 miles, 273,200 kilometers, in diameter, but less than 10 miles, 16 kilometers, thick. There are 6 different rings, the largest of which appears to be divided into thousands of ringlets. The rings appear to be composed of pieces of water ice ranging in size from tiny grains to blocks several tens of yards in diameter. In 1977, when Uranus occulted, passed in front of a star, scientists observed that the light from the star flickered or winked several times before the planet itself covered the star. The same flickering occurred in reverse order after the occultation. The reason for this was determined to be a ring around Uranus. 9 rings were initially identified, and Voyager 2 observed 2 more in 1986. The rings are thin, narrow, and very dark. Voyager 2 also discovered a series of at least 4 rings around Neptune in 1989. Some of the rings appear to have arcs. Areas where there is a higher density of material than at other parts of the ring.
How do permanent magnets differ from temporary magnets?
Permanent magnets, also referred to as naturally occurring magnets, remain magnetized until they are demagnetized. Naturally occurring magnets are found in minerals such as magnetite and lodestone. These magnets are known as ferromagnets.
What are Cuisenaire rods?
The Cuisenaire method is a teaching system used to help young students independently discover basic mathematical principles. Developed by Émile Georges Cuisenaire, 1891 to 1976, a Belgian schoolteacher. The method uses rods of 10 different colors and lengths that are easy to handle. The rods help students understand mathematical principles rather than merely memorizing them. They are also used to teach elementary arithmetic properties such as associative, commutative, and distributive properties.
What is the origin of the word sequoia?
The word sequoia was proposed by Austrian botanist Stephen Endlicher. 1804 to 1849, to commemorate the 18th century Cherokee leader Sequoia, c. 1770 to 1843, remembered for developing an 83-letter alphabet for the Cherokee language. Pine's white pine, 5 needles in each bundle. Needles soft and 3 to 5 inches long. Cones can be 4 to 8 inches long. Scotch pine, 2 needles in each bundle. Needles are stiff, yellow-green, 1.53 inches long. Cones are 2 to 5 inches long. Spruce white spruce. Dark green needles are rigid, but not prickly, grow from all sides of the twig and are less than an inch long. Cones are 1 to 2.5 inches long and hang downward. Blue spruce, needles are about an inch long, silvery blue. Very stiff and prickly, needles grow from all sides of the branch. Cones are 3.5 inches long. Fir balsam fir. Needles are flat, 1 to 1.5 inches long and arranged in pairs opposite each other. Cones are upright, cylindrical, and 2 to 4 inches long. Fraser fir, looks like a balsam but needles are smaller and more rounded. Douglas fir single needles, 1 to 1.5 inches long and very soft. Cone scales have bristles that stick out. An easy way to identify the various trees is to gently reach out and shake hands with a branch, remembering that the pine needles come in packages, spruce are sharp and single, and firs are flat and friendly.
What are Joshua trees?
Yucca brevifolia, a large shrub found in the southwestern region of the United States. Received its common name from Mormon pioneers. They named the tree after the prophet Joshua because its greatly extended branches resemble how Joshua used his outstretched arms to point his spear toward the city of Ai.
What is the largest artery in the human body?
The aorta is the largest artery in the human body. In adults, it is approximately the size of a garden hose. Its internal diameter is 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, thick.
What was the first medical college in the United States?
The College of Philadelphia Department of Medicine, now the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, was established on May 3, 1765. The first commencement was held June 21, 1768. when medical diplomas were presented to the 10 members of the graduating class.
What are the two forms of energy?
The two forms of energy are kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy is the energy possessed by an object as a result of its motion, while potential energy is the energy possessed by an object as a result of its position. As an example, a ball sitting on top of a fence has potential energy. When the ball falls off the fence, it has kinetic energy. The potential energy is transformed into kinetic energy.
If the sap of the poison ivy plant touches the skin, will a rash develop?
Studies show that 85% of the population will develop an allergic reaction if exposed to poison ivy. But this sensitivity varies with each individual according to circumstance, age, genetics, and previous exposure. The poison comes mainly from the leaves whose allergens touch the skin. A red rash with itching and burning will develop, and skin blisters will usually develop within 6 hours to several days after exposure. Washing the affected area thoroughly with mild soap within 5 minutes of exposure can be effective. Sponging with alcohol and applying a soothing and drying lotion, such as calamine lotion, is the prescribed treatment for light cases. If the affected area is large, fever, headache, and generalized body weakness may develop. For severe reactions, a physician should be consulted to prescribe a corticosteroid drug. Clothing that touched the plants should also be washed.
What was the first successful video arcade game?
Pong, a simple electronic version of a tennis game, was the first successful video arcade game. Although it was first marketed in 1972, Pong was actually invented 14 years earlier in 1958 by William Higginbotham. 1910 to 1994, who, at the time, headed instrumentation design at Brookhaven National Laboratory. Invented to amuse visitors touring the laboratory. The game was so popular that visitors would stand in line for hours to play it. Higginbotham dismantled the system 2 years later, and, considering it a trifle, did not patent it. In 1972, Atari released Pong, an arcade version of Higginbotham's game. And Magnavox released Odyssey, a version that could be played on home televisions.
What is superconductivity?
Superconductivity is a condition in which many metals, alloys, organic compounds, and ceramics conduct electricity without resistance, usually at low temperatures. Heike Kamerlingh Onnes, 1853 to 1926, a Dutch physicist. Discovered superconductivity in 1911. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1913 for his low-temperature studies. The modern theory regarding the phenomenon was developed by 3 American physicists: John Bardeen, 1908 to 1991, Leon N. Cooper, 1930, and John Robert Schrieffer, 1931. Known as the BCS theory after the 3 scientists, it postulates that superconductivity occurs in certain materials because the electrons in them, rather than remaining free to collide with imperfections and scatter, form pairs that can flow easily around imperfections and do not lose their energy. Bardeen, Cooper, and Schrieffer received the Nobel Prize in Physics for their work in 1972. A further breakthrough in superconductivity was made in 1986 by J. George Bednorz, 1950, and K. Alex Muller. 1927. Bednorz and Muller discovered a ceramic material consisting of lanthanum, barium, copper, and oxygen, which became superconductive at 35 degrees Kelvin, minus 238 degrees Celsius, much higher than any other material. Bednorz and Muller won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1987. This was a significant accomplishment since, in most situations, the Nobel Prize is awarded for discoveries made as many as 20 to 40 years earlier.
What is Doppler radar?
Doppler radar measures frequency differences between signals bouncing off objects moving away from or toward it. By measuring the difference between the transmitted and received frequencies, Doppler radar calculates the speed of the air in which the rain, snow, ice crystals, and even insects are moving. It can then be used to predict speed and direction of wind and amount of precipitation associated with a storm. The National Weather Service has installed a series of next-generation radar, Doppler radar systems throughout the country. They are especially helpful in measuring the speed of tornadoes and other violent thunderstorms.
Which dogs are the easiest to train?
In a study of 56 popular dog breeds, the top breeds to train were Shetland sheepdogs, Shih Tzus, miniature toy and standard poodles, Bichons Frises, English Springer Spaniels, and Welsh Corgis.
How serious is osteoporosis?
Osteoporosis, from the Greek osteo, meaning bone, pore, meaning passageway, and osis, meaning condition, is a condition that reduces bone mass because the rate of bone reabsorption is quicker than the rate of bone deposition. The bones become very thin and porous and are easily broken. Osteoporosis is most common in the elderly, who may experience a greater number of broken bones. As a result of the mechanical stresses of daily living and not from accidents or other trauma. Generally, osteoporosis is more severe in women, since their bones are thinner and less massive than men's bones. In addition, estrogen helps to maintain bone mass. So the loss of estrogen in women after menopause contributes to more severe osteoporosis.
Below are listed some pollutants found in houses. Why is exposure to asbestos a health hazard?
Asbestos fibers were used in building materials between 1900 and the early 1970s as insulation for walls and pipes, as fireproofing for walls and fireplaces, in soundproofing and acoustic ceiling tiles, as a strengthener for vinyl flooring and joint compounds, and as a paint texturizer. Asbestos poses a health hazard only if the tiny fibers are released into the air. But this can happen with any normal fraying or cracking. Asbestos removal aggravates this normal process and multiplies the danger. Level it should only be handled by a contractor trained in handling asbestos. Once released, the particles can hang suspended in the air for more than 20 hours. Exposure to asbestos has long been known to cause asbestosis. This is a chronic, restrictive lung disease caused by the inhalation of tiny mineral asbestos fibers that scar lung tissues. Asbestos has also been linked with cancers of the larynx, pharynx, oral cavity, pancreas, kidneys, ovaries, and gastrointestinal tract. The American Lung Association reports that prolonged exposure doubles the likelihood that a smoker will develop lung cancer. It takes cancer 15 to 30 years to develop from asbestos. Mesothelioma is a rare cancer affecting the surface lining of the pleura, lung, or peritoneum, abdomen, which generally spreads rapidly over large surfaces of either the thoracic or abdominal cavities. Current treatment methods include surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, although mesothelioma continues to be difficult to control.
What is a close encounter of the third kind?
UFO expert J. Alan Hynek, 1910 to 1986, developed the following scale to describe encounters with extraterrestrial beings or vessels. Close encounter of the first kind, sighting of a UFO at close range with no other physical evidence. Close encounter of the second kind, sighting of a UFO at close range, but with some kind of proof, such as a photograph, or an artifact from a UFO. Close encounter of the third kind, sighting of an actual extraterrestrial being. Close encounter of the fourth kind, abduction by an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
How is bulletproof glass made?
Bulletproof glass is composed of two sheets of plate glass with a sheet of transparent resin in between. Molded together under heat and pressure. When subjected to a severe blow, it will crack without shattering. Today's bulletproof glass is a development of laminated or safety glass. Invented by the French chemist Édouard Benedictus, 1878 to 1930. It is basically a multiple lamination of glass and plastic layers.
When was cement first used?
Cements are finely ground powders that, when mixed with water, set to a hard mass. The cement used by the Egyptians was calcined gypsum. And both the Greeks and Romans used a cement of calcined limestone. Roman concrete, a mixture of cement, sand, and some other fine aggregate, was made of broken brick embedded in a pozzolanic lime mortar. This mortar consisted of lime putty mixed with brick dust or volcanic ash. Hardening was produced by a prolonged chemical reaction between these components in the presence of moisture. With the decline of the Roman Empire, concrete fell into disuse. The first step toward its reintroduction was in 1756, when English engineer John Smeaton 1724 to 1792, found that when lime containing a certain amount of clay was burned, it would set under water. This cement resembled what had been made by the Romans. Further investigations by James Parker in the same decade led to the commercial production of natural hydraulic cement. In 1824, Englishman Joseph Aspdin, 1799 to 1855, obtained a patent for what he called Portland cement, a material produced from a synthetic mixture of limestone and clay. He called it Portland because it resembled a building stone that was quarried on the Isle of Portland off the coast of Dorset. The manufacture of this cement spread rapidly to Europe and the United States by 1870. Today, concrete is often reinforced or pressed rest, increasing its load-bearing capabilities.
What is reflexology?
Reflexology is the application of specific pressures to reflex points in the hands and feet. The reflex points relate to every organ and every part of the body. Massaging of the reflex points is done to prevent or cure diseases. Believed to have been used in Asian cultures as long as 2,000 years ago. Reflexology was introduced to the United States at the turn of the century by Dr. William Fitzgerald, 1872 to 1942, and Eunice D. Ingham, 1889 to 1974. Today nearly 25,000 certified practitioners can be found throughout the world.
What is Hopper's rule?
Electricity travels 1 foot, 0.3 meter, in a nanosecond, a billionth of a second. This is one of a number of rules compiled for the convenience of computer programmers. It is also considered to be a fundamental limitation on the possible speed of a computer. Signals in an electrical circuit cannot move any faster.
Are vitamin supplements necessary?
Vitamin supplements may be a useful addition to the diet of individuals who do not receive all of the nutrients they need from their diet. These individuals cannot or do not eat enough of a variety of healthy foods.
What do the numbers on a bag of fertilizer indicate?
The three numbers, such as 15-20-15, refer to the percentages by weight of macronutrients found in the fertilizer. The first number stands for nitrogen, the second for phosphorus, and the third for potassium. In order to determine the actual amount of each element in the fertilizer, multiply the percentage by the fertilizer's total weight in pounds. For example, in a 50-pound bag of 15-20-15, there are 7.5 pounds of nitrogen, 10 pounds of phosphorus, and 7.5 pounds of potassium. The remaining pounds are filler.
What is synthetic skin?
The material consists of a very porous collagen fiber bonded to a sugar polymer, glycominoglycan, obtained from shark cartilage. It is covered by a sheet of silicon rubber. It was developed by Yanis V. Yanis, 1935, and his colleagues at Massachusetts Institute of Technology around 1985. Soon after its introduction, synthetic skin was used to successfully treat more than 100 severely burned victims.
What are the major characteristics of all chordates?
All chordates share a notochord, dorsal nerve cord, and pharyngeal gill pouches. The notochord, a cartilaginous supporting rod, runs along the dorsal part of the body. It is always found in embryos, but in most vertebrates it is replaced during development by a backbone of bony or cartilaginous vertebrae. The tubular dorsal nerve cord, dorsal to the notochord, is formed during development by an enfolding of the ectoderm. In vertebrates, the nerve cord eventually becomes encased and thus protected by the backbone. The pharyngeal gill pouches appear during embryonic development on both sides of the throat region, the pharynx.
What is a meltdown, and what does it have to do with the China syndrome?
A meltdown is a type of accident in a nuclear reactor in which the fuel core melts, resulting in the release of dangerous amounts of radiation. In most cases, the large containment structure that houses a reactor would prevent the radioactivity from escaping. However, there is a small possibility that the molten core could become hot enough to burn through the floor of the containment structure and go deep into the earth. Nuclear engineers call this type of situation the China syndrome. The phrase derives from a discussion on the theoretical problems that could result from a meltdown. When a scientist commented that the molten core could bore a hole through the earth, coming out if one happened to be standing in North America in China. Although the scientist was grossly exaggerating, some took him seriously. In fact, the core would only bore a hole about 30 feet, 10 meters, into the earth, but even this distance would have grave repercussions. All reactors are equipped with emergency systems to prevent such an accident from occurring.
What is Bayesian mimicry?
In 1861, Henry Walter Bates, 1825 to 1892, a British naturalist, proposed that a non-toxic species can evolve, especially in color and color pattern, to look or act like a toxic or unpalatable species in order to avoid being eaten by a predator. The classic example is the viceroy butterfly, which resembles the unpalatable monarch butterfly. In another example, the larva of the hawk moth puffs up its head and thorax when disturbed, looking like the head of a small poisonous snake, complete with eyes. The mimicry even involves behavior. The larva weaves its head back and forth and hisses like a snake. This is called Bayesian mimicry.
Which scientific disciplines provide evidence for evolution?
Although information from any area of natural science is relevant to the study of evolution, there are several in particular that directly support the work of Darwin and Wallace. Paleobiology, geology, and organic chemistry provide insight on how living organisms have evolved. Ecology, genetics, and molecular biology also demonstrate how living species are currently changing in response to their environments and therefore undergoing evolution.
Which country is the largest producer of coal?
China is the world's largest producer of coal, producing an estimated 3,209,677,000 short tons in 2009.
How is hair color determined?
Genes determine hair color by directing the type and amount of pigment that epidermal melanocytes produce. If these cells produce an abundance of melanin, the hair is dark. If an intermediate quantity of pigment is produced, the hair is blonde. If no pigment is produced, the hair appears white. A mixture of pigmented and unpigmented hair is usually gray. Another pigment, trichosiderin, is found only in red hair.
What is a control group?
A control group is the experimental group tested without changing the variable. For example, to determine the effect of temperature on seed germination. One group of seeds may be heated to a certain temperature. The percent of seeds in this group that germinates and the time it takes them to germinate is then compared to another group of seeds, the control group, that has not been heated. All other variables, such as light and water, will remain the same for each group.
What is cogeneration?
Cogeneration is an energy production process involving the simultaneous generation of thermal, steam or hot water, and electric energy by using a single primary heat source. By producing two kinds of useful fuels in the same facility, the net energy yield from the primary fuel increases from 30 to 35% to 80 to 90%. Cogeneration can result in significant cost savings and can reduce any possible environmental effects conventional energy production may produce. Cogeneration facilities have been installed at a variety of sites, including oil refineries, chemical plants, paper mills, utility complexes, and mining operations.
Which trees are members of the rose family, Rosaceae?
The apple, pear, peach, cherry, plum, mountain ash, and hawthorn trees are members of the Rosaceae family.
What is the most abundant group of organisms?
The eubacteria are the most abundant group of organisms on Earth. More living eubacteria inhabit the human mouth than the total number of mammals living on Earth.
What is the essential relationship between the heart and lungs?
The teamwork of the heart and lungs ensures that the body has a constant supply of oxygen for metabolic activities and that the major waste product of metabolism, carbon dioxide, is continuously removed. This occurs through the pulmonary circulation, with the heart supplying blood that has moved through the body to the lungs. The lungs connect to the heart through blood vessels. The pulmonary artery delivers deoxygenated blood to the lungs from the right ventricle. and the pulmonary vein delivers oxygenated blood to the left atrium of the heart.
Who invented the fuel cell?
The earliest fuel cell, known as a gas battery, was invented by Sir William Grove. 1811 to 1896, in 1839. Grove's fuel cell incorporated separate test tubes of hydrogen and oxygen, which he placed over strips of platinum. It was later modified by Francis Thomas Bacon, 1904 to 1992, with nickel replacing the platinum. A fuel cell is equivalent to a generator. It converts a fuel's chemical energy directly into electricity.
What is the difference between a domain and a kingdom?
A domain is a taxonomic category above the kingdom level. The three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, which are the major categories of life. Essentially, domains are superkingdoms. A kingdom is a taxonomic group that contains one or more phyla. The four traditional kingdoms of eukarya include Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia.
How many fatalities occur each year in the United States due to lightning?
During the years 1980 to 2009, an average of 57 people were killed each year by lightning. The 10-year average, 2000 to 2009, decreased to only 41 people per year. An estimated 300 people are injured by lightning strikes in the United States annually.
How much water is in an inch of snow?
An average figure is 10 inches, 25 centimeters, of snow is equal to 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, of water. Heavy, wet snow has a high water content, 4 to 5 inches. 10 to 12 centimeters, may contain 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, of water. A dry, powdery snow might require 15 inches, 38 centimeters. Of snow to equal 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, of water.
What is an isotope?
Elements are identified by the number of protons in an atom's nucleus. Atoms of an element that have different numbers of neutrons are isotopes of the same element. Isotopes of an element have the same atomic number but different mass numbers. Although the physical properties of atoms depend on mass, differences in atomic mass. Mass numbers have very little effect on chemical reactions. Common examples of isotopes are carbon-12 and carbon-14. Carbon-12 has 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons, Carbon-14 has 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 8 neutrons.
What do the 7.5-minute quadrangle maps represent?
One of the most popular maps of the United States Geologic Survey, USGS, is the 7.5-minute quadrangle map. Produced at a scale of 1:24,000. Each of these maps covers a four-sided area of 7.5 minutes latitude and 7.5 minutes longitude. The United States has been divided into precisely measured quadrangles. Each quadrangle in a state has a unique name. The maps of adjacent quadrangles may be combined to form a large map. There are more than 54,000 USGS topographic maps that cover the 48 contiguous states and Hawaii.
What is email?
Electronic mail, known more commonly as email, uses communication facilities to transmit messages. A user can send a message to a single recipient or to many different recipients at one time. Different systems offer different options for sending, receiving, manipulating text, and addressing. For example, a message can be registered, so that the sender is notified when the recipient looks at the message. Though there is no way to tell if the recipient has actually read the message. Email messages may be forwarded to other recipients. Usually messages are stored in a simulated mailbox in the network server or host computer. Some systems announce incoming mail if the recipient is logged onto the system. An organization, such as a corporation, university, or professional organization, can provide electronic mail facilities. National and international networks can provide them as well.
How and when was coal formed?
Coal is formed from the remains of plants that have undergone a series of far-reaching changes, turning into a substance called peat, which subsequently was buried. Through millions of years, Earth's crust buckled and folded, subjecting the peat deposits to very high pressure and changing the deposits into coal. The Carboniferous, or coal-bearing, period occurred about 250 million years ago. Geologists in the United States sometimes divide this period into the Mississippian and the Pennsylvanian periods. Most of the high-grade coal deposits are to be found in the strata of the Pennsylvanian period.
What is a tsunami?
A tsunami is a giant wave set in motion by a large earthquake occurring under or near the ocean that causes the ocean floor to shift vertically. This vertical shift pushes the water ahead of it, starting a tsunami. These are very long waves. 100 to 200 miles, 161 to 322 kilometers, with high speeds, 500 miles per hour, 805 kilometers per hour, that, when approaching shallow water, can grow into a 100-foot, 30.5 meter, high wave as its wavelength is reduced abruptly. Ocean earthquakes below a magnitude of 6.5 on the Richter scale. And those that shift the seafloor only horizontally, do not produce these destructive waves? The highest recorded tsunami was 1,719 feet, 524 meters, high along Lituya Bay, Alaska. On July 9, 1958. Caused by a giant landslip, it moved at 100 miles, 161 kilometers, per hour. This wave would have swamped the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which are 1,483 feet, 452 meters, high.
What is the Superfund Act?
In 1980, the U.S. Congress passed the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, commonly known as the Superfund Program. This law, along with amendments in 1986 and 1990, established a $16.3 billion Superfund financed jointly by federal and state governments and by special taxes on chemical and petrochemical industries, which provide 86% of the funding. The purpose of the Superfund is to identify and clean up abandoned hazardous waste dump sites and leaking underground tanks that threaten human health and the environment. To keep taxpayers from footing most of the bill, cleanups are based on the polluter pays principle. The EPA is charged with locating dangerous dump sites, finding the potentially liable culprits, ordering them to pay for the entire cleanup and suing them if they don't. When the EPA can find no responsible party, it draws money out of the Superfund for cleanup.
What is cloning?
A clone is a group of cells derived from the original cell by fission, one cell dividing into two cells. Or by mitosis, cell nucleus division with each chromosome splitting into two. Cloning perpetuates an existing organism's genetic makeup. Gardeners have been making clones of plants for centuries by taking cuttings of plants to make genetically identical copies. For plants that refuse to grow from cuttings, or for the animal world. Modern scientific techniques have greatly extended the range of cloning. The technique for plants starts with taking a cutting of a plant that best satisfies the criteria for reproductive success, beauty, or some other standard. Since all of the plant's cells contain the genetic information from which the entire plant can be reconstructed, the cutting can be taken from any part of the plant, placed in a culture medium having nutritious chemicals and a growth hormone. The cells in the cutting divide, doubling in size every 6 weeks until The mass of cells produces small white globular points called embryoids. These embryoids develop roots, or shoots, and begin to look like tiny plants. Transplanted into compost, these plants grow into exact copies of the parent plant. The whole process takes 18 months. This process, called tissue culture, has been used to make clones of oil palm, asparagus, pineapples, strawberries, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, bananas, carnations, ferns, and others. Besides making highly productive copies of the best plant available. This method controls viral diseases that are passed through normal seed generations.
What is the name of the bird that perches on the black rhinoceros's back?
The bird, a relative of the starling, is called an oxpecker, a member of the Sternidae family. Found only in Africa, the yellow-billed oxpecker, Buphagus africanus, is widespread over much of western and central Africa, while the red-billed oxpecker, Buphagus erythrorhynchus, lives in eastern Africa from the Red Sea to Natal. 7 to 8 inches, 17 to 20 centimeters, long with a coffee-brown body. The oxpecker feeds on more than 20 species of ticks that live in the hide of the black rhinoceros. Diceros bicornis, also called the hook-lipped rhino. The bird spends most of its time on the rhinoceros or on other animals, such as the antelope, zebra, giraffe, or buffalo. The bird has even been known to roost on the body of its host. The relationship between the oxpecker and the rhinoceros is a type of symbiosis. A close association between two organisms in which at least one of them benefits, called mutualism. The rhinoceros relief of its ticks and the bird's feeding clearly demonstrates mutualism, a condition in which both organisms benefit. In addition, the oxpecker, having much better eyesight than the nearsighted rhinoceros, alerts its host with its shrill cries and flight when danger approaches.
What is heavy water?
Heavy water, also called deuterium oxide, D20, is composed of oxygen and two hydro-8 atoms in the form of deuterium, which has about twice the mass of normal hydrogen. As a result, heavy water has a molecular weight of about 20, while ordinary water has a molecular weight of about 18. Approximately 1 part heavy water can be found in 6,500 parts of ordinary water, and it may be extracted by fractional distillation. It is used in thermonuclear weapons and nuclear reactors and as an isotopic tracer in studies of chemical and biochemical processes. Heavy water was discovered by Harold C. Urey, 1893 to 1981, in 1931. He received the Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1934 for his discovery of heavy hydrogen.
What is biogeography?
Biogeography is the study of the distribution, both current and past, of individual species in specific environments. One of the first biogeographers was Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778. A Swedish botanist who studied the distribution of plants. Biogeography specifically addresses the questions of evolution, extinction, and dispersal of organisms in specific ecosystems.
How much gasoline is wasted by underinflated tires?
Underinflated tires waste as much as 1 gallon, 4.5 liters, out of every 20 gallons, 91 liters, of gasoline. To save fuel, follow the automaker's guidelines regarding recommended air pressure levels for the tires. However, greater fuel economy can be achieved by inflating tires to the maximum air pressure listed on the side wall of the tire, resulting in less rolling resistance.
Did Darwin and Mendel know each other?
Although both men lived during the same time period in the 19th century, they did not know each other. Charles Darwin's, 1809 to 1882, publication on the Origin of Species, 1859. Popularized his theory of natural selection but raised many questions as to how organisms could display modified or new traits. In 1865 Mendel published his landmark paper Experiments in Plant Hybridization. Researchers have been unable to document whether either man used the other's work in the development of their respective theories.
Who discovered the principle of buoyancy?
Buoyancy was first discovered by the Greek mathematician Archimedes, c. 287 to 212 BCE. The famous story recounts how the king of Syracuse, Hieron II, c. 306 c. 215 BCE, asked Archimedes to verify that his crown was made of pure gold without destroying the crown. When Archimedes entered his bath, he noticed that the water overflowed the tub. He realized that the volume water that flowed out of the bath had to be equal to the volume of his own body that was immersed in the bath. Shouting "Eureka!" he ran through the streets of Syracuse announcing he had found a method to determine whether the king's crown was made of pure gold. He could measure the amount of water that was displaced by a block of pure gold of the same weight as the crown. If the crown was made of pure gold, it would displace the same amount of water as the block of gold. The principle of buoyancy, also known as Archimedes' principle, states that the buoyant force acting on an object placed in a fluid is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object.
How long is the digestive tract?
The digestive tract, also called the alimentary canal, is approximately 30 feet, 9 meters, long from the mouth to the anus. The small intestine is about 22 feet, 7 meters, long. The large intestine is about 5 feet, 1.5 meters, long.